Hey everyone, I'm Jessica Moore, 32, born and raised in Charleston, South Carolina. I run a small bakery called Moore's Oven, the kind of place that smells like butter and cinnamon at 6 a.m. and somehow makes strangers talk like old friends. But a few months ago, my own family made me feel like I was nothing more than a joke made out of flour and sugar. It happened live, on Facebook Live, of all places. It was my mom's idea. A family reunion stream to show everyone how well we were doing. She sat beside my dad on our old porch swing, smiling into the camera, bragging about my brother Daniel, our golden boy in New York managing big investment portfolios. Then she laughed and said, "Meanwhile, Jess is still playing with dough in that little shop of hers." My dad chuckled, adding, "At least she won't starve. She's surrounded by carbs." The comments started rolling in. Laughing emojis, inside jokes, people tagging each other. I stared at the screen, frozen, my phone trembling in my hand. Somewhere between humiliation and disbelief, I realized they weren't joking. They were proud of him and ashamed of me. That night, I scrolled through the replay, their words echoing over the sound of customers chatting in the cafe downstairs. Every laugh felt like another slap. I wanted to scream, "You have no idea what I've built." But instead, I just closed the app and wiped my hands on my apron. Silence was safer. Silence, at least, couldn't be screenshotted. If you've ever had your family belittle your dreams, especially in public, leave a comment. Tell me your story. And if you've been fighting to prove your worth, hit subscribe, because this story will make you believe that sometimes the quiet ones hit back the loudest. When I walked home that night, the streets of Charleston were glowing with that humid southern light, the kind that makes every memory stick to your skin. I kept replaying their voices. Mom with her polished tone, "That bakery thing is cute." Dad with his old school laugh, "She's wasting that business degree." Daniel's name kept popping up in the comments. "So proud. What a success. You must be thrilled." They didn't see the 4 a.m. mornings or the 14-hour shifts. They didn't see the line that formed every Saturday, couples holding hands over coffee I roasted myself. To them, I was still that girl who gave up on a real career. When the live stream ended, I muted our family group chat. Messages pinged for hours. Aunties sharing clips, cousins laughing. I didn't respond. Not one word. Because if I had, I might have said something I could never take back. That night, alone in my apartment above the bakery, I sat on the floor beside the window, smelling vanilla and shame. I kept thinking, how do you fight people who are supposed to love you? I didn't have an answer yet. All I knew was that something inside me cracked. A clean, painful break between who I was and who I'd have to become. And I promise you, that break, it changed everything. When I was a kid, the world inside our house felt simple. My dad, Richard Moore, was a proud Navy veteran who believed discipline solved everything. My mom, Elaine, ran a small real estate agency, always dressed sharp, always talking about image. And then there was Daniel, my older brother, 2 years ahead, always praised, always right. Back then, Sundays meant pancakes and laughter. Dad would flip them onto our plates like medals, telling Daniel, "That's what a winner's breakfast looks like." I'd giggle, waiting for my turn, but when mine came, he'd smirk and say, "And here's for the artist, the one who dreams instead of plants." It was meant as a joke, but it stuck. Even at 9, I understood what it meant. I was the different one. I was the kid who painted walls with icing instead of colors, who baked cookies in an easy bake oven while other kids played basketball. Mom used to shake her head and sigh, "You'll outgrow this phase, Jess." But I never did. By high school, Daniel had become the model son. Straight A's, debate club, college scouts calling our house. Meanwhile, I was that girl sketching cupcakes in the margins of my math homework.
I didn't care about Wall Street. I cared about warm bread and how it made people smile. I still remember my first bake sale. I raised $400 for charity and felt unstoppable. But when I told Mom, she smiled tightly and said, "That's sweet, honey, but next time focus on something useful." Useful. That word haunted me. When I got into a culinary arts program in Charleston instead of following Daniel to New York University, my parents didn't even try to hide their disappointment. At dinner, Dad put down his fork and said, "You're really gonna waste your potential on pastry school." Daniel laughed from across the table. "Guess we'll have one real career in the family," he said, half joking, half true. I remember sitting there, my appetite gone, tracing patterns on the tablecloth while Mom poured more wine and changed the subject. It wasn't just words, it was silence, too. That heavy silence that told me I was already less than. Still, I tried to prove them wrong. I worked part-time at a local cafe, studied at night, burned my hands learning the perfect caramel. I'd call home, hoping to share small victories, a pastry award, a new client. But every time, they'd pivot the conversation back to Daniel. He had just landed an internship on Wall Street. He had been mentioned in a local newspaper. He was making us proud. And me? I was still doing that baking thing. Sometimes I'd drive home for holidays, walking through the front door with baskets of bread and pies, hoping they'd see my heart in them. Mom would thank me, but barely look up from her phone. Dad would pat my shoulder, ask about my little hobby, and then turn back to Daniel's stories about investment returns. Each visit ended the same way. Me driving back to Charleston in silence, headlights cutting through tears I refused to let fall. But no matter how small they made me feel, I couldn't stop baking. It was the one place I felt whole, where dough rose and so did I. Flour and sugar didn't judge. They just became what I shaped them into. Years later, when I opened my bakery, I called it Moore's Oven because I wanted to reclaim the name that once made me feel small. I invited my family to the grand opening. They didn't show up. Not a single one. That night, I stood behind the counter, watching strangers fill the room, laughing, smiling, praising the taste of my cinnamon rolls, and realized I'd built something real, something mine. But deep down, I still wished they could see it too, because no matter how old you are, there's a part of you that still wants your parents to say, "We're proud of you." I kept telling myself that someday they would. Someday they'd finally look past the flour on my hands and see the fire underneath. But that day never came. Not until everything else came crashing down.
Success changes people, or maybe it just reveals who they always were. When my brother Daniel launched his own investment firm in New York, my parents acted like he'd cured cancer. Mom sent out Christmas cards with his company logo on them. Dad told everyone at church our son's making moves on Wall Street. When they visited Charleston, they'd walk into my bakery like tourists in a petting zoo. Curious, polite, but slightly disgusted. Mom would wrinkle her nose and say, "It's cute, Jess. Smells homemade." Then she'd take one picture for Facebook, post it with a caption like, "Visiting our daughter's little project," and tag Daniel in the comments so people would see he was supporting family. He'd usually reply, "Always here for my kid sister," like I was some charity case. The comments? Brutal. "Such a nice brother. So good of you to support her hobby. Family goals." Every one of them felt like a knife twisting in slow motion. I tried to laugh it off, even thank them for coming. But every compliment toward Daniel came with a quiet slap to my face. When I showed them our new espresso machine, a big deal for a small business, Daniel smirked and said, "Impressive. You could almost pass for a real cafe." Mom chuckled, sipping her latte. Dad nodded like he was grading me.
I wanted to scream, "I built this from nothing while you were busy bragging about him." But I didn't, because no one wins yelling into a void. The final straw came last summer. Daniel hosted a more family networking dinner at a fancy Charleston hotel. He invited local business owners, investors, and me. For a second, I thought maybe, finally, he was proud. Maybe he wanted to introduce me to people, to help my bakery grow. I was wrong. Halfway through dinner, while everyone sipped wine, Daniel raised a toast. "To my sister Jessica," he said, smirking. "She's always been creative. I guess that's one way to put it." Laughter bubbled around the table. He went on, "She followed her passion, even if it didn't exactly, pay off the way Wall Street does." More laughter. Even my parents chuckled. And then, this part still burns, my dad added, "Hey, at least she'll keep us fed when Daniel retires early." Everyone laughed. Everyone except me. I just sat there, smiling tight, staring at the tablecloth until the candlelight blurred. The same hands that could craft the perfect pie crust were clenched so hard they shook. When the dinner ended, Daniel patted my shoulder. "Don't take it personally, Jess. You know we love you. It's just family banter." I smiled, but inside I was screaming. Family banter doesn't leave bruises you can't see. For weeks after that, I couldn't shake it. Every time I walked into the bakery, I heard their laughter echo in my head. Every loaf I pulled from the oven felt like proof I wasn't enough. Even customers noticed the change. "Everything okay, Jess?" one of them asked. I lied, said I was fine, but I wasn't. I was boiling. Then came that cursed Facebook Live, the final humiliation. It was supposed to be fun, a family check-in, but instead it was an ambush. Mom and Dad laughed about Daniel's latest $1 million deal and tossed in, "And Jess, she's still rolling dough like it's 1950. Daniel chimed in from the comments, "Hey, at least she's consistent." Hundreds of people watched, reacted, and shared. Some even joked along. I watched it in real time, the people I loved turning me into a meme. And for what? Because I didn't fit their version of success? My phone buzzed with notifications for hours. Relatives sent laughing gifs. Old classmates commented, "Didn't know you were still baking." The next morning, my bakery's page had dozens of tags linking to the video. Customers saw it. My employees saw it. And when one of them asked if it was true, if I really didn't make any money, I felt something inside me snap. That night, I deleted the family group chat. No goodbye, no explanation, just silence. Because I realized something brutal. Silence was the only language they'd never learned to ignore. Still, even then, part of me hoped they'd notice I was gone. They didn't. They kept posting, kept bragging, kept pretending I didn't exist. And that's when the anger turned into something else. Something colder, sharper. The kind of quiet fury that builds not from hate, but from heartbreak. The kind that makes you start planning, not revenge exactly, but redemption.
The days after that live stream blurred together, a strange mix of exhaustion and numbness. I kept showing up at the bakery, opening at dawn, smiling at customers like nothing had happened. But behind that counter, every breath felt heavier. Even the smell of coffee, once my favorite comfort, made me sick. Because every cup I poured reminded me how invisible I was to the people who were supposed to love me most. I stopped calling home. They didn't notice. Weeks passed without a single text from Mom or Dad. Not even a "how are you?" Maybe they thought I'd gotten over it. Maybe they didn't care. Then one night, my phone buzzed. Dad calling. My first instinct was to ignore it, but something in me said, "Answer." His voice was tight, controlled.
the way it always got when he was hiding panic. "Jess," he said, "we need your help. It's Daniel. He's in trouble." Trouble. The word echoed like a bad omen. He didn't explain much, just that Daniel's company was under investigation, that some financial discrepancies had surfaced. I could hear Mom crying in the background. They sounded desperate, scared, human. For a split second, I felt that old instinct to rush to them, to fix things, to be the good daughter. But then he said it. "We had to use the family trust to cover some of Daniel's legal fees. We'll pay you back when it's all settled." I froze. The family trust wasn't just theirs. It was mine too. Money I'd saved from the bakery for years, set aside for expansion, new ovens, maybe even a second location. I'd contributed to that fund from every holiday season, every late-night catering job, every extra dollar I could spare. "How much did you take?" I asked, my voice barely steady. Dad hesitated. "About 50,000, he said finally. "Jess, he's your brother. Family comes first." Something inside me cracked open again, this time wider, deeper. "Family comes first," he said, as if those words erased the betrayal, the humiliation, the theft. I wanted to shout that they'd never put me first, that my dreams, my work, my life had always come second to Daniel's pride. Instead, I hung up. That night, I sat alone in the bakery after closing, the lights dimmed, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the room. $50,000. Gone. Just like that. Years of sweat, sacrifice, and hope, taken without a thought. I stared at the framed photo on the counter, one from the bakery's opening day. Me, grinning, holding a tray of cupcakes, Mom and Dad on either side. They looked proud in the picture. But now, even that memory felt like a lie. Tears burned down my cheeks before I even realized I was crying. For once, it wasn't just sadness. It was the realization that there might never be a we again. Not as a family. Not after this. I barely slept that night. By morning, I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize myself. Red eyes, shaky hands, a smile that wouldn't come back. I'd lost more than money. I'd lost the belief that love could outweigh disappointment. That was the day I stopped hoping they'd ever see me. Because hoping was what hurt the most. The morning after that call, I unlocked the bakery like I always did. Same key, same squeak in the door hinge, but something inside me was different. The air felt sharper, colder, like the world had stopped making room for illusions. I brewed a pot of coffee and stared at the "Family Comes First" plaque my mom had given me years ago. For the first time, I saw it for what it really was, a leash. I didn't cry that day. I didn't scream either. I just worked. I kneaded dough until my palms ached, until the rhythm of it replaced the noise in my head. Every push felt like a question. What if I stop needing their approval? What if I build something that speaks louder than their silence? That afternoon, Ethan Blake walked in, one of my regulars, a freelance photographer who always ordered the same thing, black coffee and a blueberry muffin. He noticed the dark circles under my eyes and asked, "Rough day?" I laughed, the kind of laugh that hides tears. "Rough year," I said. He didn't push, just sat there with his camera bag by his feet, watching the rain outside. Then, almost casually, he said, "You ever thought about telling your story? People love real stories, the messy, honest ones." I shrugged. Who'd care about a baker from Charleston? He smiled. "More people than you think." Something about that stuck with me. Maybe it was the way he said it. Calm, certain, like he'd already seen it happen. A week later, he came back with a proposition. Let me shoot a photo series. You, your bakery, your process. Let's call it The Hands That Rise. I hesitated, terrified of more judgment, but deep down I knew I needed a new narrative. So I said yes. We spent the next month capturing everything: the flower clouds, the morning light, the tiny details no one ever noticed. He posted the first photo online with a caption that read, "She was laughed at for baking. Now her art feeds an entire community." The post went viral, small at first, then everywhere. Local blogs picked it up, food magazines reached out for interviews. People started coming to the bakery not just for pastries, but for the story behind them. A story of rejection, resilience, and quiet rebellion. For the first time, the word more didn't sting. It stood for something I'd built, not something I was born into. Ethan and I started collaborating more. Branding projects, local food markets, even short clips where I talked about how baking had saved me. Every comment, every kind message from strangers filled a space I didn't know was still empty. They saw me, really saw me, in a way my own family never had. One evening as we cleaned up after closing, Ethan looked at me and said, "You realize you've already won, right?" I frowned. "Won what?" He grinned. "Winning the game they never knew you were playing." And maybe he was right, because winning wasn't about making them jealous or proving a point. It was about being at peace with myself. It was about realizing that my worth wasn't up for debate, not even from the people who raised me. That night, I went home, looked out over the quiet Charleston streets, and whispered to myself, "I'm not the failure they think I am." And for the first time in years, I believed it. A year later, Moore's Oven didn't just survive, it thrived. What started as a small corner bakery had become a Charleston landmark. The morning lines wrapped around the block, our pastries sold out by noon. I'd hired 3 full-time employees and opened a cozy cafe space with warm lights and secondhand books stacked along the walls. People came not only for the food, but for the feeling, that simple joy of belonging. I used to dream about my parents walking in, seeing what I'd built, maybe even smiling with pride. But now, I didn't need them to. Their absence no longer hurt. It just felt distant, like an echo from another life. Then, one morning, the past caught up with me. I was frosting a cake when my phone buzzed with a headline alert. More Capital under investigation for securities fraud. My stomach dropped. Daniel's company. Within hours, the news spread. He'd been accused of forging financial documents, funneling investor funds into personal accounts, and covering losses with fake statements. The same local paper that once called him Charleston's rising star now splashed his mugshot across the front page. The comment section was merciless. Guess the golden boy wasn't so golden after all. Imagine being that family. I didn't have to imagine. That evening, Mom called for the first time in months. Her voice was smaller than I remembered. "Jessica," she whispered, we're ruined. Your father's patients are leaving. People are gossiping. We can't even go to church." For a moment, I almost pitied her. But then she said, "We never thought this could happen to us." Us. The same us that never included me. I took a deep breath and said, "I'm sorry you're going through that." Her silence was thick, like she was waiting for me to say more, to offer money, forgiveness, something. But I didn't. I had nothing left to give them but peace, and even that felt too generous. 2 weeks later, they showed up at the bakery unannounced. I was behind the counter, arranging croissants, when I saw them through the glass door. Mom in oversized sunglasses, Dad clutching his hat like a shield. The room went quiet. Customers turned, recognizing them from the headlines. They stepped inside, awkward and out of place. Dad started, "Jess, can we talk?" I nodded toward a back table. We sat. No hugs, no fake smiles, just three people bound by blood and broken trust. Dad spoke first. "We were wrong," he said simply. "About you. About everything." Mom's eyes were wet, her voice trembling. "We just wanted you to have a safe life. We didn't understand yours." For years, I'd rehearsed this moment in my head, the speech I'd give, the clever things I'd say to make them feel what I felt. But now, sitting across from them, I realized I didn't need any of that. I didn't need an audience or revenge or even their apology. I had already healed. They were the ones still bleeding. So I just said, "I hope you find peace, like I did." And I meant it. They left quietly, their heads bowed. The bell above the door chimed as it closed. Soft, final, almost merciful. Later that night, I got a message from an old friend. "Congrats, Jess, you're on TV." Turns out, a national food show had featured Moore's Oven in a segment about local businesses that rose from humble beginnings. They called it the sweetest comeback. The next morning, we had a line out the door. Someone even left a bouquet of sunflowers on the counter with a note. "For the girl who turned pain into purpose." I stood there, holding the flowers, feeling a wave of warmth wash over me. It wasn't pride. It wasn't revenge. It was freedom. Freedom from needing to be chosen. Freedom from the old version of me who begged for approval that would never come. I looked around my bakery, the laughter, the smell of fresh bread, and the sound of plates clinking, and smiled. This was my justice. Not their downfall, but my rise.
It's funny how peace doesn't arrive with fireworks. It slips in quietly like morning light through a bakery window. Some days, I still wake up at 4 a.m. out of habit, thinking of everything I lost. Other days, I wake up grateful for everything I found. It's been 2 years since the last time I spoke to my parents. We never had a dramatic confrontation, no big goodbye, just silence that stretched until it became normal. Sometimes that silence still hurts, but mostly it feels like space. Space to breathe, to heal, to live on my own terms. Daniel was sentenced to probation, community service, and financial restitution. He moved back in with Mom and Dad in the same house where they once filmed that Facebook Live. Neighbors whisper, friends keep their distance, and I guess karma did what I never could. But I don't celebrate it. Watching people you once loved crumble isn't satisfying. It's sobering. Because the truth is, I didn't win because they lost. I won because I stopped playing their game. I used to think family was everything, that love meant forgiving, explaining, proving. But now I know love can't survive where respect doesn't exist. I learned that boundaries are not walls, they're doors you choose who to open for. And I chose to close mine not out of anger, but out of mercy, for them and for me. Every now and then, someone brings up my family. A customer might say, "I saw your brother in the news," or "Your parents must be proud of what you've done." I just smile and say, "I hope they're doing okay." Because that's the truth. I hope they are. But I've made peace with knowing they might never understand me, and that's okay. Not everyone is meant to walk beside you, even if they share your last name. On quiet evenings, after the bakery closes and the city hums outside, I sit by the window with a cup of chamomile tea and think about the girl I used to be, the one who begged to be seen, the one who believed her worth depended on applause. She was tender, hopeful, and heartbreakingly naive, but she was brave too. Brave enough to keep baking even when no one believed in her. If I could talk to her now, I'd tell her this: you didn't need their approval.
You needed your own, and you earned it. One loaf, one bruise, one sunrise at a time. Sometimes people message me online after hearing my story. They say, "My family laughed at my dream too," or "I wish I had your courage." I always tell them the same thing. You already have it. You just have to use it. Because courage isn't loud, it's quiet. It's waking up every day and choosing to keep going when the world tells you you're foolish. It's building something that no one claps for, until one day they finally see. So if you are listening right now and you've been dismissed, mocked, or underestimated, know this: your worth doesn't shrink because someone else refuses to see it. Keep building, keep believing, and when the time comes, your success will speak the only language they can't ignore: silence filled with purpose. I'm Jessica Moore, the girl they laughed at, the girl who baked through heartbreak and came out whole. And if you've ever been there too, standing in the ashes of someone else's approval, I hope my story reminds you that you can rise again, one quiet victory at a time.